Hello, and welcome to the CX-Centric Leaders podcast, where we talk to customer experience leaders from around the world. Today I'm joined by Sharon Boyd, and we'll be discussing customer-centric culture. Sharon is Interim Chief Customer Experience Officer at MKL Innovation, having delivered multi-million pound programs for several large blue-chip companies across retail, hospitality, IT, telecoms and aviation. She brings a well-rounded approach. So Sharon, firstly, welcome to the podcast. Maybe you could give us a glimpse of your personal life.
Yes, okay. Lovely. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate this. So I live in Milton Keynes with my husband, my two boys, the cutest dog in the world, who would be here with me if she can, because she's like my little shadow and she just goes everywhere and is on every single call that she can get in.
Yeah.
And then I've got a 65-year-old tortoise as well. He's just out there in the garden because I'm in my summer house come office out here, which is great. Though sometimes I'm in the middle of chatting to someone on a Zoom call and suddenly there'll be squirrels running around on top of the roof, which is a little bit novel. So I'm CXO at MKL Innovation, which is an Internet of Things company, cutting edge technology company in Yorkshire, which is fairly new for me, and I'm absolutely loving it. So yeah, a
Okay.
lot I'm doing at the moment is around that.
So can you just briefly explain, for those who might not know, what is Internet of Things all about? J- Just a high level, you know?
Really high level. Well, it is basically taking all of your different assets, connecting them together so you can see them in one place. You can see what they're up to, that they're not causing any mischief, and then control them as well. So yeah, and what I mean by
Okay.
assets is things like your boilers and your well, anything in your house. I mean, something like your Ring doorbell, for instance,
Yeah.
is an asset. You can see what it's doing and what it's up to. But it's basically about saving energy and making sure that you got everything under control in terms of your assets.
Okay.
Perfect if you've got a business.
Sounds very, very, very exciting. And Sharon, what are you passionate about?
Well, I've got to say customers, haven't I? Which thankfully is true, since I'm all about CX. But yeah, definitely, I'm really passionate about customers and making sure that customers are really in the midst of everything that a business does, and that every business is really customer focused, and especially tech companies, because it's easy to focus more on the tech and the shiny stuff rather than the real customer focus to who's actually going to buy it, who's actually going to use it, and what
Yeah.
needs to be done to embed the customer in the whole way through, especially the recovery processes.
Sharon, thank you for that. How would you define company culture? And then also, how would you define customer-centric culture?
I'd say company culture is just simply what happens inside a company when no one's looking. So no one's looking over your shoulder. What is it that you do? What are your behaviours? And with a customer centric culture, that is then all about being focused on the customer and all of the behaviours, all the rewards, all the processes, all the whole structure
Wow.
focused around the customer.
Okay.
If you get it right, that can really give you a competitive edge, especially when you are full on embracing a customer centric culture. Then yeah, you can be really winning if you do it right.
Okay. And so when you say it gives you a competitive edge, how do you think it gives you that competitive edge?
I think because I mean, take a tech company where you are creating a product. If you have created a product where you designed the whole thing around your customer base and really thought about the user from start to finish and thought about streamlining all the support processes and everything you do, then you can't help but create something decent that a customer actually wants, especially if you involve them right from the start. Something that we're doing at the moment is creating what's called a customer or a client sandbox for our IoT. And exactly as you kind of mentioned at the start, IoT can be quite hard to grasp. It's a bit of a concept that sounds a little bit scary. So what we're trying to do is help customers touch and feel it by being able to log on to something that they can play with and not be not damage it in any way. But because they can get hands-on, they can understand it, and that also then helps us to use their feedback to design the whole product from start to finish with the customer in mind. I think that's really important with tech companies, that you keep checking back in with them, especially if it's tech. What do they want? What do they need? And not be running off after the shiny stuff.
I love that. I love that. Thanks for that, Sharon. So the question I have for you is, what are the common mistakes that people make when aiming to transform the company culture into something more customer centric?
I'd say KPIs can be, if you focus on the wrong ones. So thinking about a contact center, for instance, if you are putting in KPIs that are all about rewarding people for the most calls, how many can you churn out? How many quickly can you resolve? You're just going to get people picking up a phone and putting it down as soon as you can, getting people off the phones, customers off the phone, and that just isn't going to embed a really good customer centric culture.
Yeah.
So thinking of, obviously you need a balance because you need productivity, certainly in a call center environment, but trying to just churn through lots at once is not the way. It needs to be much more about something like first time resolution, for instance, for the customer, which means they ring up and they get their problem actually sorted and go away.
Yeah.
Hopefully then return and know and have trust in you that you are actually going to solve their problem first time. Or thinking about the feedback that you get from customers at the end and how happy they are, etc., rather than just focusing purely on productivity metrics.
Okay, so getting those KPIs nailed down, basically. Yeah, they're quite difficult, I guess, especially because you're sort of throwing away traditional metrics and replacing them.
Yeah, and that leads me on to the next one. So if you're trying to go from quite a traditional culture where you have been really thinking about productivity and outcomes into behaviours, then you've really got to think about how you close down the avenues to those old behaviours and the things that you would have done before. So if you were always thinking about productivity and come on, and that's how your leaders measured the performance of your team, for instance, and everything around your appraisals and your hiring processes and everything have all been done around that old culture, then you need to spend some time as you think about your new culture to shut down your old one. Otherwise, it's going to be really confusing for someone who's sort of halfway between the two, thinking, but before you wanted me to do this, and now you want me to do that, and the old structure is still, the appraisal still sat around the old one.
Yeah.
So you should still be trying to churn through all the calls quick. So trying to close down the old ones properly and then moving properly into the new version is really key.
Okay.
The other one I'd say, or another couple I'd take, culture change just can't be a task. It's not, you can't pull one of us project managers in and say, go change the culture. It's down to you to change the culture. You've got 3 weeks to do it. Here's your task, go. It's a living, breathing thing. It's not tick box. And you've got to really involve everybody in it. Yes, you need someone to own it. Of course you do. And it's not just top down, it's bottom up as well. But it's not a one-off thing. What do you think? Would you?
Yeah, I agree. It definitely can't be a one-off thing, because for me, culture is about changing habits, like habits of a collective group of people, and I'll talk about this more in the book, that I've written. We look at how long does it take on average to form a habit, and it varies greatly, but the longest time that people take is around 250 days, to form a habit, so a 3-week task it's not going to cut it.
No.
I was gonna ask you, the question is, how does that work when does it happen that an organization will ask you, for instance, where you are now, they'll say, okay, we need a more customer centric culture. Would they just put that as an objective for a project or initiative, and if they would do that, for instance, like what would they put as the benefits of that? That's the question.
So I guess a real world example of that, I worked on a project where we had a task force to do this at Home Retail Group, where we had three big retail names, so Argos, Homebase, Habitat, all with different cultures. And we had a set of values for each of them as well. And under the umbrella of Home Retail Group, these three organisations sat, plus group, and they had different cultures across all of them. So our task as a team was to look at all the cultures, look at the best in class cultures like Zappos, for instance, and then look at the different values and think about how we bring us all together. We're all retail, so we've all potentially got crossover customers. So how do we come together as an umbrella and really deliver best in class, customer focused culture? And I think so the outcomes to that were building a plan where you could then ask someone at the end of it, what does your culture feel like? Somebody who's just joined, or a customer, what do you think the culture feels like, or a supplier, and see what they would say. And if they said it was a really great customer-centric culture, then you've got to win. But it was also about building a lot of activities in, as I said, kind of it's not a one-off task. There's not an end date. It is building a lot of different activities all the way through to keep embedding it, to keep focusing. So we had things like road shows where we had lots of people with different stands all about the customer. We had suppliers coming in and we had customers coming in, and just keep doing those different events so that it's really spread out, but it keeps going into the mindsets of those that are having to build stuff around the customer.
I love this, Sharon. Thank you. Any more challenges? Any more challenges or common mistakes that people make that you want to point out?
Yeah, I think a single hire can make or break a culture. I've definitely seen that firsthand. So when companies are thinking about hiring, we've really got to think about the culture fit and then build the hiring practice around CX. So asking CX related questions, making sure there's definitely customer empathy there. So I think that has got to work even if the person that you're employing is not customer facing. So for example, we're hiring a developer at the moment, and we made sure that the questions we asked were also about the customer, even though she'll probably never speak to a customer. So things like making sure that they carefully think about the end user and the coding with the human factor in mind to make the product really easier to use.
Wow.
Which hopefully will then help with easy adoption, less service calls, and then hopefully more sales. But it is, if I'm building this code and the front end is going to look like this, where would a customer or a user naturally click next? What would they do? So kind of that hire piece right from the start to finish around really getting the customer involved, even if they're never going to be customer facing.
Excellent. And how is that going? Because, for instance, you have to remember that some of the people applying for these jobs, like for instance a developer, they might be used to going to an interview and just saying, okay, I've got this experience, I know these languages, I've done these sort of projects before. So is there a shift on the side of the applicant, the person actually applying for the job also?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really helping them put themselves in their customer's shoes. And sometimes when you're asking the questions, when you're interviewing someone who's quite technical, you can hear them, oh yes, we use Python or we use this, and it's kind of going, okay, great. But when have you spoken to somebody where you've had to resolve conflict, or where have you had to really put yourself in a customer's shoes, and what was the outcome? It's really trying to build that human factor into the interview. And we can, as we onboard people into our team, we're going to be taking them through the different behaviours that we've got set up, that should go right from the engineers to the MD to kind of go, right, okay, this is how we treat a customer, whether or not we're in the office or whether we're out in the van, to try and make sure that we're all treating customers the same way. And that's one of the first things we're going to do when we onboard, certainly our developer, which is in a couple of weeks. Exciting
I
time.
love this. Yeah, exciting. Sharon, I love this. Were there any more mistakes or challenges that you wanted to mention?
Um, I think there's also micro pockets of culture across an organisation. And sometimes you can have an absolutely fantastic culture in one area and everyone really wants to be in that team and loves it and they're all about the customer. And you've got another team that's much more toxic. So when you're thinking about culture change, you can't just assume your whole organisation has got exactly the same culture across it, because it just won't. And that's why kind of thinking about different areas. I mean, certainly thinking about somebody like legal or the regulatory area of your business.
Yeah.
That if they don't understand what impact, you can hear the squirrels.
Yeah, I can hear.
If they can't understand what impact that they have on the customer, and they're just putting in lots of regulations in place, which makes it really hard for somebody dealing directly with the customer, then you're going to constantly get this mismatch. And across those two silos, you can just keep getting conflict. So it's important to think about the culture and how you embed it in different areas, even if they're not customer facing.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for that, Sharon. That is really, really interesting. Next question I want to ask is, so please, Sharon, you need to give us some tips. Either some tips or some best practices for initiating or getting a culture transformation right?
I would suggest using a Gemba walk, which, if people don't know what this is, it is, you have back to the floor in a lot of areas. A lot of companies do back to the floor days where the leaders go back in and they serve the coffee
Okay.
to customers. It's similar to that, but it's not so hands on. It is, so if you were wanting to see what your culture was like, for instance, you could go to and watch and observe the customers actually being supported, and observe what happens, and then interview those that are actually serving them. So asking them, do they have the right tools? What should we change? What does it look like and feel like for you? What do customers want that we don't already give them? How can we really make sure that we are customer centric if we're saying that we are? The Gemba Walk is perfect for that. It's GEMBA, if anyone's kind of looking it up going, what is she talking about?
Okay.
It's
Okay.
a really good way of observing what your front end looks like and asking them, don't change anything at the moment, we just want to have a look. But then once you've interviewed those front end employees, getting them involved in the projects that are actually going to transform their area can then be really motivational for them. And they've often got the best ideas about how to really make and wow a customer. So it's a really good resource.
Certainly. Okay, so that's GEMBA, the
Yeah,
Gemba Walk.
again, Bob Walk. Yep.
Okay, I'll put that in the show notes. And Sharon, any more best tips, expert advice that you can give us?
I think if you are, I think tailor everything. Once you've worked out what your culture is going to be or what it is, tailor everything to it. We'd all, I mean, everyone always, when they think about business, or not everybody, but a lot of people are Apple fangirls and boys. So they're like, Apple's got it right. We'll copy what Apple does in our business.
Yeah.
That works for some people, but if you've got a really laid back, entrepreneurial, fast paced culture, and then all of your processes or everything else that you do is like full of red tape, you're going to really struggle. So feel free to be yourself, to have your own identity and culture. Cheers. And to really embrace that in what you do, rather than just trying to be very normal and fit in with what everyone else is doing. It's fine to have a unique culture. In fact, I think it should be celebrated, especially if it's a real customer centric one.
I love that, Sharon. So it's about being authentic, and it's about finding your own culture for your own organization. You cannot just lift and shift a culture that worked for some other business, you know. So
Absolutely.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for that. Any more tips that you want to give, or best practices that you'd like to share?
Um, I think probably just bringing it to life, give it a bit of flavour. Um, So some of the things that we did when I remember being at Home Retail Group was we had a bit of a theme tune. When we were talking about culture and customer, we
Yeah.
had like a little customer animated character, and every now and again we'd just play this little theme tune of this particular customer persona into the whole of the building. And it was just a tiny little jingle, just every now and again, but it was quite chirpy, and it would just like people would think, customer Shirley likes blah blah blah, and it once you embed it just becomes fun.
I like that.
And it just sticks in mind. So rather than just we've got this is our company culture, this is our strategy, stick it on a wall and then put it in your drawer. You need to find ways to make it live and breathe, and that's how it's going to embed, and that's what people will remember. So something like at EasyJet, when I first started, they had what was called Orange Spirit, and that was all about being really being able to serve the customer in the right way and being fun and lively and yourself, and you could feel it as a culture. And something like that, when you keep talking about it and you keep celebrating it and celebrating those behaviours and showing people what good looks like, if you do it in a fun and engaging way, it's much more likely that your culture change is going to stick.
I love that, Sharon. So really, it's about investing time to find creative ways to communicate culture and to celebrate the wins and to celebrate the behaviors that and encourage the positive behaviors that fit within the target culture. So I love that. I love that, especially the creativity element. So really do appreciate that. Sharon, any more tips? Keep going. If you have any more, please
Well,
just.
I don't think I should give you any more because it's all in the chapter of the book.
Oh, okay. So let's get on to this. So Sharon, if I'm right, you co-authored Customer Experience 2. Do you want to just talk us through this project a bit more, just so we can get a
Yeah.
glimpse?
Yes, it's a really exciting project. So there's 24 of us,
Yeah.
all in the world of customer experience, and the chapters cover off the 6 pillars at the moment of the CXPA, and they're all kind of strategy or culture or data metrics, but some really interesting stuff about the fundamentals of CX. And this is a follow-on book from the first one. The first one was a bestseller,
Yeah.
Customer Experience 1. So we're hoping that this next one also flies and that everyone buys it. But yeah, if you want any more tips, you're going to have to read that. I'm not giving any more for free.
Okay, so I will put a link to this in the show notes. But what did you write about in your chapter then?
So I wrote about launching an out of this world customer strategy. And I call it out of this world because I'm talking about spacey stuff in it. Kind of linked it to the launch of the recent launch of the NASA and SpaceX
Wow.
spaceship.
So yeah, really excited to read that, Sharon. It sounds interesting, sounds exciting. And I guess that's on Amazon, and we can share the link to that in the show notes. So what else? Because I saw that you are leading some webinars around customer experience, but specifically for Internet of Things. Do you want to talk a bit more about that also?
Right, yeah. So we've got our webinar coming up on the 22nd of July, and that is IoT through the lens of a customer and the human factor of IoT. So it
Wow.
should be a good one. You can get onto it through Eventbrite. But yeah, 22nd of July is the big day.
Okay, sounds good. And also, just in case um, users don't or the listeners cannot reach it at that time, is it going to be recorded also?
Yes, yeah, we've got a YouTube channel, MKL Innovation. So go on and subscribe, and it will go
Okay.
out on there.
MKL Innovation.
That's it.
Okay. Okay. And I guess the MK is Milton Keynes, and the L, what does that stand for? Do you know?
It's not actually, no, because the founders are up in Yorkshire.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's nothing to do with MK. It's just a
Okay.
snazzy name that they've picked.
Okay. Nice name. I like it. I like it. And yeah, Sharon, I'll be honest, it's been really lovely to speak to you, but I want to know before you leave, is there anything else? What else are you working on? We want to know. what can we expect to see in the next few months from you? Because I see that you're pushing a lot in the CX space, really leading some great initiatives. So yeah, just tell us more. What can we expect in the next few months?
Well, I've been working on the CX World Games,
Ooh,
which have just been amazing.
yeah,
So I know we've got a bit of a celebration for that in a couple of weeks. So
yeah.
fingers crossed that the Rockstar team have won. I know you're on it as well, Jonathan. So best of luck to you as well. But I hope we do actually win one. It'd be nice if we won.
Okay. How did you find the CX games then? Like, how was it for you?
We really enjoyed it. Yeah, it was a slight slow start for us. There was basically just me and James Dodkins to start with, going, come on, people, join us in our team. But by the end, I think we really built a really great team around us. We're on WhatsApp all the time. Yeah, so it's been lovely collaborating with global CX professionals and really knowing that we are doing the greater good for those companies and actually giving some value back. So
Yeah.
it's been brilliant to kind of stretch our CX muscles and learn different areas and different techniques from each other.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For me, it was totally fantastic as well. I just, yeah, agree with what you said. Really fantastic initiative. And if anyone doesn't know about it, just check out Lime Trippy. That's the company who hosted this. And yeah, it's just a fantastic initiative where customer experience professionals from across the world come together to solve problems and work out how they can improve the experience. And sometimes, normally, it's for charitable causes. And yeah, it's some stuff with meaning basically. So they did a good job of picking out some great tasks that everyone could get behind, and support.
Great
So
judges.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But yeah, it's fantastic. But obviously, Sharon's in a different team to me, so yeah, there's a bit of rivalry, a bit of competition there.
Captain, aren't you?
Yeah, I was captain of the ambassadors, and yeah, in the end we had a great team. The A team, probably. Yeah, we can
No,
call ourselves.
no. I'm all
No,
about rock stars.
no, we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But yeah, it's been a great experience. Sorry, I'm being interviewed here. But but yeah, thank you for that, Sharon, and good luck with the results for that. Listen, Sharon, I have to say it was a real pleasure to be able to interview you, and to just to gain a lot of knowledge. I definitely learned a lot here, and I'm hoping that our listeners and viewers will learn a lot too. How can we connect with you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. So that's probably a good place to start. Or my website, canoodlecx.com. That's another one. Or I'm on Twitter, Instagram at canoodlecx.
Okay,
I'm everywhere.
Canoodle CX. Okay, so just remember the name and check Sharon Boyd also, Boyd for the surname, on LinkedIn. Sharon, thank you for your time. It's been a real pleasure. And yeah, have a good rest of the day.